There you go.
Thank you. So this is the meeting of the Board of Water Commissioners on Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. So I'll start out with status reports on a few things. And I'll ask a few people to chime in on this, particularly from Whitewater. So we are facing, the PFA testing is due to start here in October. And John Aprea has been involved with this in terms of getting the supplies for that. And I know we're going to be facing the collection of samples in this initial round. So John, you have anything to add on that?
I actually, no, I gave the kit to Jonathan, and our office found out that if we use that kit, we get the free test. And if we use it in October, it applies to that. So your first test is free. And then depending on results, that determines the next step. Right now it's scheduled for quarterly. And I think Jonathan can answer to when exactly he's taking the samples. And I believe it's very soon.
Yep,
Jonathan,
it'll be done this Thursday.
Okay. Interestingly, we got an email from, or actually Hillary got an email from a Pleasant Water System, I think in South Wellfleet, that they were looking for assistance in paying for their the fees associated with, I think, the second or third round of funding. As they anticipate that it's going to cost them in the range of $6,000 a year for the testing. Have any of you heard that?
It all depends on the initial results, and there's a big flow chart that we could provide you, but I don't want to speak to it. Our compliance group could walk you through it all more in depth, but based on initial results, the monitoring frequency would increase based on levels. So yes, it can become very expensive if you have to continually test bi-weekly or monthly. So at this point, we just hope for the best with these initial samples. And I can provide more information if you would like to the board.
Well, I think, well, we'll see how that goes, after the first round of testing for us. But I think this is to the Board of Water Commissioners here, that I think we ought to be looking at this in terms of what's the state's role or responsibility with respect to this, particularly in terms of the testing requirements for this. As if it's going to be that expensive, I would hope that there would be some relief for smaller water systems such as ours. If this has to be done more frequently, than, say, our water testing, standard water testing that is done. Any thoughts on that?
I believe it's going to be considered your standard water testing, and that is it. That is what I've heard. It's not going to change. Everyone's doing it, every community system. And again, they do have all the rules and regs in the office, and if Jonathan wants to get them together, that's great.
I'm just curious, do you have a sense of what the fees are, or the laboratory fees, for example, going forward for, say, one round of testing?
I don't want to speak out of turn, not knowing exactly, but I think it's somewhere around $300, right in that neighborhood.
And how does that compare to what we are charged for the standard testing fees for just for the existing tests that are required?
Oh, it's more expensive than any test that we take. You probably take all your
that's why I'm
coliforms for less than that.
that we may need to be, petitioning DEP for assistance, that they need to be doing something with the labs to get these fees down to a more reasonable level. Because small water systems, such as ours or Pleasant, I think we're Pleasant Point, that's, it's very expensive for them. So.
Yeah, I would just build on John and Jonathan's comments a little bit there, that yes, that is absolutely the case. We have many, I mean, your system in relationship to a lot of the other smaller systems that we operate is theoretically quite a bit larger, but they're all incurring these same costs, and it's,
Right.
depending on the amount of sources that we have and everything else. But to what John and Jonathan said, the initial round, you as well as other small systems can go for the free sampling initially, and that's going to be a big tell really in this first 1 to 2 quarters, because you're looking at a minimum of 2 quarters of sampling before you can petition for any reduction in overall sampling. But any detect in that sampling will drive monthly analytical requirements, and again, for the town, there's certainly impacts there, but it's no different for those small systems, and whether it be the source collection, finished, and what we often have told different clients to budget between time and reporting and analytical, and the confirmation samples that can be up to $1,500. So with everything all included, I think the numbers that John gave you were good sound numbers specifically for the analytical, but all the supporting work that goes along with it. So this has significant impacts for everyone with the water systems, and then not only are there the impacts related to initial analytical collection data and everything else, but if there are detects, what you're talking about for treatment in some of these small systems, the treatment's fairly straightforward right now, but doesn't mean that there isn't significant costs in engineering and the feasibility of adding on and where equipment goes and everything else. But I think John and Jonathan hit the nail on the head, and it's going to be very much about figuring this first round of sampling in. And for any small communities outside, the advisement is to try to get, just try to still submit for that free PFAS sampling, because it at least defers some of those initial costs. And if results come back favorable in those first 2 quarters, it could be far less. But what, the tricky part is if it doesn't, and you do get detects, the monthly sampling, and at what limits they are, because the limits are parts per trillion. So where the exceedance level is, and the impacts there. So there's a lot of unknowns, unfortunately, but between the analytical work that's done in October and then supporting analytical that's going to be done in and around January, those will really be the tells for the community.
Right. So Eric, for example, here in Wellfleet, obviously we're subject to this schedule of testing, but what about like Harborside Village, any of the other community water systems, small community water systems that are out there, such as Outer Cape Health, I know is considered a public water system. Would they be subject to the same testing requirements?
I believe so. With some seasonal systems, there can be some variables there for the seasonals on openings and closings and things of that nature. But we're really looking at there, and as John and Jonathan spoke to, we're happy to provide a flow chart. It is a complex flow chart because there's so many variables that can occur. But yes, you're looking at all these small water systems being impacted by having to collect this PFAS sampling. And much of that, some of it had already begun in other communities and is part of the free PFAS sampling. But October, there's a huge influx across the state of a lot of these smaller systems being sampled.
Yeah. What about the beaches here in Wellfleet that are right now, they're tested, you folks have been doing the testing. I don't know if it's once or twice during the summer. But will they be also subject to this level of testing?
I can't say definitively on that one.
Jim, they will be tested, but because they are a different classification, they're not required to be tested until September of 2022. So we have to have the initial test done within the next year. It's all based on classification, the amount of people that it's serving, transient versus community systems. So transient systems don't have to be tested immediately like a community system like Wellfleet Municipal,
Yeah.
but they will
Okay.
be within the next year.
So I guess one of the bigger questions, Jim, I think, which is coming from Pleasant Water System, was, is there something that the town can do because of potentially the number of people who may have to do this testing? It sounds like the testing could affect any public water supply, which would mean even restaurants, because they're classified as public water supplies. So you have Pleasant, you have Harborside Village, you have potentially some of these restaurants, and obviously the town beaches. Is there a way to get any kind of synergy by having, for example, Whitewater collect all the samples and do it collectively?
I mean, yeah. I hear what you're saying. We got that. That will be something we need to be looking at, as we go forward with this. It could become very expensive on the whole, for this, and it's not something that our small system can take on the costs for all of those. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting that we would take that we would pay for it, but that if if there's one collection, for example, if Whitewater's doing all the collections, and then reporting back, through us, at least with a single contract, it may be cheaper for everybody.
Right.
And, we could then, apportion the actual cost to the, customers, so to speak, that are getting, taking advantage of that service.
Right. All right.
We would definitely encourage through the Mass DEP free sampling, anything that they can do at this point because DEP continues to push that and taking that opportunity to help kind of defer some of the costs. So for those small communities in and around the area, reaching out to do that. And John and Jonathan are a little bit more experienced in this than I am as far as communication with the different groups. A lot of it's being coordinated through UMass and things like that. But there's some links on the DEP website that can help those communities get that set up. And they have some pretty decent resources right now to help get this come together and do what needs to be done. Sample collection and technique is very important with this as well. But there is some decent information out there. So if anybody needs us to help share some of those links that you can then pass on to others in the community, we'd be happy to do so.
Okay, good. Does anybody else on the Water Commission have questions on this?
Tom shaking his head no. I don't know if
Is Neil
Galaxy
back?
Note 9 is Neil. Oh, there's Neil. Neil's coming in. I don't know who Galaxy Note 9 is. Who's muted?
All right. Well,
There you go, Neil. It looks like you're on mute. Can you try saying something, Neil? Let's see if you got you finally. He can't hear us.
okay.
Can you hear us, Neil? I don't know if Neil can hear us, but go ahead, Jim.
All right. Well, so the next item on here is the sanitary survey, and that was done back in June. We submitted the response. Thanks to Jonathan, assisted with sections of this, and we also had the assistance of Paul Millette at Environmental Partners. And there was, when we submitted it, we indicated that we were not able to be in full compliance. And that we anticipated that it would take us into the spring before we would be in full compliance because of the work that needed to be done at the Coles Neck well field in terms of the drains there. So, Jonathan, is there anything else that you can report on this? Have you heard anything more from Paul Millette?
No, you pretty much summed it up, and I have not heard back from him this week. I know you're supposed to reach out to DEP on Monday, and I have not heard from him since.
Okay. So let's see what, so that one will remain open. Well, I can follow up with Paul to check on that. And this is just as another FYI, the next item on here is the depth sensors in the wells at the Boy Scout camp. We did advise Butch Nealon to proceed with that work. The cost of which I believe is $2,825, if I'm not mistaken. So that those sensors will be replaced and calibrated so that they read more accurately. And Jonathan did, I believe you were the one who told me that you guys did a manual sounding of those wells and determined that the depth of water in the two wells there was very close, within a foot or so of each other, 71 feet or something like that of water in each of those columns. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They're virtually the same.
Yeah.
71 feet in each.
Yeah, yeah. And so we haven't seen any significant change in that level. So,
Nope.
Okay. So the next two items on here are the RFPs that are out right now. For one, the search for a contractor for the water main project, and also the RFP for the water system operator. And those two the bids are due to be in by Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, at which point we will be opening them then. I cannot tell you, I don't know if there's been any response or what responses we have on this so far, so to date. So, there any questions on that? So the next item that's on here is the search for a financial consultant. And Karen and I are meeting tomorrow with Becky Slick and Charlie Sumner to go over the process on this. Because it does require that we get multiple bids to select a consultant for this project. And hopefully that we'll be able to complete that work within the next couple of weeks, so that we could then proceed with an analysis of the rate structure, connection fees, and other aspects, financial fees associated with the system, and also the revenue assumptions that we're basing this all on. So that's just a kind of an update on where we're at with that. Jonathan, can you give us Oh, I'm sorry, either Jonathan or John, can one of you give us an update on the backflow inspections that are being conducted by Whitewater now, or the cross connection / backflow inspections that you're doing?
I can speak to it a bit. Kurt came down and his first task was to identify all the high hazards and do the best he could to get into the places, find out, contact information. I believe, Jim, that I forwarded you that. Do you recall
Yeah.
getting it?
Now, you mean a list? I have not seen a list yet.
Yeah, I did forward it to you. What he did is he
Okay.
started to compile a list with new phone numbers. And while he was in the high hazards that he knew of, he tested them. Once he got through that, he turned around, he started to do cross connection surveys, and that's where he stands right now. So he's, he was pulled out of town for a couple of days last week, and I think he's busy out of town this week. And I will let you know before he comes back down to get
Okay.
started again. He's on a good track down there, and what he's doing is he's trying to find all the customers that we weren't servicing down there. So
Right.
once he does, that'll be revenue for you guys.
So maybe I should have started with the explanation of why this is important, why we have to do these inspections, who's requiring it.
I sent you, along with the list that he made, I sent you a synopsis of the rules. A water system is responsible to the last flowing cap of the water that we provide. So you could go to any place that has public water, say it's a school, say it's anyone who's connected to the water system. And every tap in that place has to have clean water in it. And with that comes the cross connection program. So it's our job to protect the water so it is clean when it gets to the last tap. And there's tons and tons of rules. So his cross connection survey, he goes out and he looks for things that could be dangerous to the water. Say there's a radiator shop, and in that radiator shop there's a men's room. So it has a water system going in. I don't know if you can picture it or not, but we lose pressure in that men's room, and the water from the rest of that shop starts to drain backwards. When pressure comes back on again, if that water is tainted, it'll end up into one of the taps. I know it's a tough explanation. We can use a whole building, I guess would be another way to explain it. At the meter in the building, we put in a backflow preventer. Say the building, again, is a radiator shop. So if something happens and the water system loses pressure, all the water that they use for process in that building stays in that building. And that is the way that we protect buildings and people's health through cross connections. So step one is to identify them by doing the surveys. Step two is to put devices in where they're necessary. Step three is if they're testable devices, they get tested. If it's an RP or a high hazard device, it gets tested twice a year. If it's a dual check valve, mostly found on irrigation systems without, or fire systems that don't have glycol, that gets tested once a year. And then the next phase is all those reports go to DEP. Every device is listed in the DEP office. And if you look on your ASR, you'll see that it has been reported yearly.
Yeah. So I guess the importance to the water commissioners here is that we know that that this is a requirement from DEP, and the minimum is that the reporting on this would be once a year for certain systems, but it could be multiple times a year for other systems that are other customers that are on the system. And this is something that normally would be billed to the customer. So we need to make sure that we incorporate this into our fees for to get the request payment from customers for this. Does that also include, say, connections for fire suppression systems?
No, they don't have, well, only all the internal fire protection that has glycol on it, you'll find an RP on it. Ones that, that is tapped off the water main itself, but most fire is tapped off the main, and it is a positive pressure, and it's always a positive pressure. And if anything, they'll have a dual check that's once a year, but most of the time they don't.
Okay. Questions by any of the water commissioners?
And just to add, that is exactly what Kurt is doing down there. He's going to find out what needs to be where, what is already in place, beyond the list that we already had. And he'll get all that information together for you. And I'm sure there'll be recommendations and maybe some unhappy people who have to add backflow devices.
Hello, this is Catherine. I'm the Galaxy.
Oh, okay, thank you. Any questions, Catherine?
No, I've been having I have to be on my Galaxy because I couldn't do the Zoom on from my regular computer. So I'm sorry. I'm a little bit up in the air on a lot of these things, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. Well, my system is out as well, so I'm just on the phone. So
Yeah, same as me. I don't know what's going on. Right.
yeah. Anyway, so there's one more item that I would like some comments from Whitewater on, and that is that we learned that there was a coliform positive test on coliform at the water tower. Jonathan, do you have anything that you can tell us about that?
Yeah, I can just give you the rundown. So the monthly TC and coliform samples that were taken in September came back positive at the tower. So the following day, once we received the results, we took repeat samples at the tower again and at the fire station at the elementary school. The elementary school and the tower came back positive. The fire station came back negative. So we chlorinated the tower, which is typical protocol to kill anything up in there. And we flushed through parts of the entire system. And then samples were collected again today, actually. So hoping those come back negative. If not, we will chlorinate it once again. As far as the cause of it, nothing is really sticking out to us. It would be a good idea to having that inspection completed at the water tower. If we're going to use an outside contractor, try to get that moving forward to make sure there's nothing going on at the top. Make sure all the seals are intact and doing their job. No water's coming in, rainwater, anything from the outside, but nothing was glaring at us that could have been the cause of it.
All right. Well, our goal is to get that inspection done as soon as possible after we have made the decision with respect to the water system operator contract. So that, that could begin in November. We would be able to do that, or sooner if we have a signed contract. So but just to make folks aware here, this is not the same thing that what we experienced last year when we had the E. coli incident on Nicole's Neck. Can you explain the difference there?
The difference between coliform and E. coli?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if this were an E. coli incident, we'd be treating it somewhat differently, correct?
Yeah, there would be the boil water that has to do with fecal matter. The coliform is more just an indicator of a type of bacteria, but is not an immediate health concern.
Right. Okay. Any questions from any of the water commissioners?
No,
Yes, the tower. What are we testing in the tower? Being supplied to the tower? Out of the tower.
Yeah,
That surround the tower.
that was kind of broken up. Could you repeat that, please?
Okay. Testing the input to the tower itself, or the output, and are those 3 sites or something like that available?
The water flows into the tower and out of the tower through the same pipe. So based on the flow,
Oh, really? Okay.
based on the flow of water, you could be testing water coming back down or water going in. When we take the samples, the water is coming, the wells are not running at that point and water's coming back out. So it's representative of what is being stored up in that tower.
So Jonathan, I believe you said to me that the testing up at the Boy Scout camp well site where the water is being drawn from now, that was negative for coliform, right?
Correct.
So
Raw water coming out of the ground was negative.
okay. Any other questions?
How urgent do you, how urgent do you think this is? I mean, obviously gives, I think, everybody concern. Is this something that we should be investigating, immediately, 1 week, 2 weeks? I mean, anytime there's coliform someplace where it's not supposed to be, I think that'd be a pretty big concern.
We
We
have
actually
to
tried
invest.
We actually tried to climb the tower ourselves. We made it up 2 out of the 3 ladders, and then there was a missing carabiner, so we didn't go any further for safety reasons. But we should definitely get somebody up there as soon as we can to take a look and make sure everything is intact up there.
If you guys weren't able to climb, what do you suggest we do?
I just need to order another part to be able to, so when we go up there, we weren't able to get up because we didn't want to unhook ourselves and not be attached to anything because we were missing that one part. But if we go up with it in our pocket, we'll be able to do it properly, or we get somebody from outside to go up. And either way, I'm going to order what I need so we have it. I just didn't have any spares. It's not like it can't be done. I just don't have it on me right now.
So, so when do you think that'll happen?
I could get a part probably within a week, but do I want to climb up there myself? Not really, but I will if I need to, if we can't get a contractor in sooner than later.
Yeah, but that's something that hopefully that would be done with the inspection, correct?
They absolutely would climb all the way up if you're having an inspection done, yes.
Yeah. So that's why we need to get this inspection done as quickly as possible. And we're not holding you responsible for that now because we've kind of held off because of the contract issue. But I'm hoping that we'll have a decision next week that we could then move forward on this.
So Jim, are you thinking that we should, I guess what I'm wondering is how are we going to get that inspection done timely?
Well, it'd be by getting the contract signed as quickly as possible. I mean, we've held off because there were other concerns with that. Any work that is recommended associated with this that may become the responsibility of the water system operator. And right now, Whitewater is operating on a contract extension that doesn't necessarily include that kind of work.
Right, but if what Jonathan is saying is it makes sense to subcontract it, can we, I mean, we had somebody do an inspection. Can we just, does it make sense to go ahead and just subcontract with them and get it done?
Well, in the past, the way this was, my understanding is that the way this is done in the past is that it's the water system operator coordinates that work. The inspection.
I think honest, just regardless, from a timeliness standpoint, I think the only variable here ultimately might be, if there's a different firm involved or whatever else, is kind of like who pays for it initially before the town ultimately gets billed for it. But you certainly could authorize that. We could certainly coordinate it at this point and get that in motion with a supporting vendor, just making sure, I think we forwarded a couple of the proposals over in the past, and as long as those don't need updates or anything else, but we could get that in motion. And it just, worst case scenario is that the town pays that directly and it isn't going through Whitewater or something along those lines. But having that inspection done by a company such as Underwater Solutions, that's what they do, is tank inspections, is kind of overdue and certainly warranted.
Yeah. So let me make one other point about that. In many or most water systems out there, there are, coliform is found in most water systems, and that's why systems are chlorinated. Am I correct?
Yes.
Typically, if you're treating with chlorine, you will not. Chlorine is killing any coliform in the water, so you would
Right.
not have it in a chlorinated system.
And we do chlorinate when we flush the lines, correct?
We chlorinated the tower. Try to do it once a month, just as good practice. When we flush the lines, just seasonal flushing, no. We did it this time because we had the TC hit, but typically if you're just flushing hydrants, flushing the lines, then no, we're not chlorinating.
Okay.
Understood. As far as testing, are there does the plumbing come all the way through the system and into the tower, or is there a direct line?
Cut out again there at the end.
I think the question is there a drain line between the wells and the tower?
Does it go through the whole system before it gets to the tower?
The water, when the wells are running, the water could be going anywhere in the system, and any excess water that isn't being consumed will go up into the tower, and that's how it fills. If there's zero usage, all 275 gallons a minute are going into the tower. But if you're using 200 gallons a minute, then only 70 gallons are going up into the tower.
Right. I understand. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. So, I think for you folks at Whitewater, that pretty much covers the areas of the meeting that we were looking for your input on. We have a couple of other things left to discuss, and that is on our base service fees charges, and also a request for a survey on it from other potential customers. So you're welcome to stay to continue to stay on the meeting with us, or at this point, if you would prefer to to sign off, that's fine too.
No, I guess on that note, just thank you all for the time this week to be able to speak to these items. And hopefully after last week, we'll continue to, I mean, after next week, we'll continue to be on these monthly meetings with you all. So
All right.
from there on, have a great evening.
All right. Thanks, Eric.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Jim, give me a call if
Thanks.
you need anything else.
So a couple of things that we had started a discussion on the base service fee charges for those customers who have signed up for water but have yet to connect. And we've gotten some, as I've mentioned at the last meeting, we've gotten some complaints about those charges from people who have paid or are paying their connection fee, but have yet to connect. Karen did some research on this to figure out what we're talking about here. What's the number of potential customers and what the bills would be for those folks if we were to suspend collection from those customers. Karen, can you speak to that?
I don't have that in front of me. I know it's pretty substantial, but I don't have that data. And I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. I'm sorry, Jim.
Okay.
But it's
what-
significant amount of money.
That's what I wanted. I was going to pose a number, but I wanted to know from you whether or not it was reasonably accurate. I thought it was something like $6,000 per.
I believe that's about right.
So if we were to suspend these payments, we would be losing roughly $6,000 per 6 months. Or is it per year? I wasn't sure.
We would lose 12,000 a year.
All right. So the question remains as to whether or not we forgive those charges for the time being until we have completed a rate analysis and come up with, some sort of plan with regard to how we manage that, or do we continue to require people to pay that? And I really would welcome, yes.
Now, do we still charge that after they hook up? Does that continue on?
They pay after they hook up.
Yes.
It becomes part of the base service fee.
Okay. Now, I would rather not drop it, but I would be willing to suspend it until we make the new changes.
Kurt or Catherine?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Catherine.
No, I'm sorry. I'm very distracted here because of I'm seeing some of you and hearing some of you. It's kind of crazy.
They're basically getting a service charge for no service, which is kind of crazy. When I was looking at I was doing some quick back of the envelope calculations, and our current debt service is $170,000, and when you actually divide by, and I think these numbers are right, Jim, is it 220 customers that we have on the system?
I think that are active customers. I believe that's about correct, right, Karen?
It's 240, I think, are active, and then we have another oh, I can't remember off the top of my head, that are just connection people that aren't using the water. But it's, I
Okay.
think it's like 240.
So with 240 active customers, just our debt service is $700 a customer. It's around 708. And we're charging what's our biannual customer charge right now?
86.98, which got increased, it'll increase in November by 2.35%.
So we're about 600 and call it $14 or, around just a little over $600 per customer off in terms of what our debt service is. And then when you look at the average cost per gallon, so if you basically take our budget, I think is 280,000 per year. And if you subtract 170,000 of that, which is debt service, and then divide that number by the number of gallons, our average water cost is about $8 per thousand, and our lowest charge for water is $1.40 per thousand. So our rates are, for the size, the numbers are really, they're really out of line. We have some serious
But
problems.
nobody's increased it since you've had it in existence. So the water prices have not been risen 2% every year since 2019, which is part of the agreement, was to increase by 2% each year, and it hasn't been done.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good observation, Karen, but even if they had, our rates are way off from what our collections need to be. So that's sort of underpinning this whole thing.
Yeah, I get it.
And so essentially, I mean, it's not the end of the world. What's going on right now is that our rates aren't collecting for what the costs are, and the difference is being made up by a subsidy from the town. So all taxpayers in the town of Wellfleet are picking up the deficit, so to speak, on the water system. If we were to add $12,000 per year to that deficit, I don't know that there's much of an impact. I mean, we have a big structural problem that we've got to deal with no matter what. So, in perspective, I do think there's an equity issue with these customers who are paying for something that they're absolutely not getting. I mean, they're not, everybody gets, whatever fire service benefits there are in the system and so on and so on. There are a lot of benefits, to having the system in town. So I just throw that out there because I honestly don't know what the right thing to do here is. But I just wanted to at least alert all the rest of the commissioners to, kind of where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things we've been dealing, the last couple of years with issues that have risen up, in terms of the system and so forth. But we really have not focused at all on recruitment or expansion of the system. And I just don't know, that's an area that I think we've really ignored now for a couple of years.
Right.
Right, and I think the the hope was that we'd get by getting a rate consultant on board, we could look at changing the rates structurally and potentially dropping the connection fees so that we'd make it much more attractive for people to connect.
Ideally, that's exactly what you want to do.
So.
Right.
Well, maybe there'll be.
I agree with you, Kurt.
Hello?
Yeah.
Jim, you broke up a little bit. Try again.
I said, I agree with you. And I think that, as Kateri is suggesting, that the answer to this is probably in getting more, we need to get more customers on the system. And how do we do that? That's where the use of a consultant to help us establish more attractive connection fee and a rate structure that works, that will result in more revenues for the system.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely true. And we've got to get somebody, this is so much work. Jim, I don't know how you keep up with all that's involved with this as a volunteer position. I really don't. We need somebody full-time or close to full-time available to deal with both sides of the water system.
Right.
Yeah. The thing is, we're living with the sins of our founders with that
You
crazy
got it.
way
Yep.
of making a large hookup fee and water.
Well,
Someone-
that's why I think it's, I would add to this, I think it's even more important that we address this as soon as possible, because facing the expansion of the system now with the installation of the new water main down Route 6 and in on Briar Lane, we have an opportunity here to reassess and determine different fees, and whether or not one of the things that I think we'll want to be considering with this is whether or not there should be any betterment fees associated with the entire system. And that's something that we would have to take back to the select board to get their approval on. But we did get approval of the idea of having betterment fees. As you may recall, at an annual town meeting a few years back when Harry Turkanian was the town administrator, that he encouraged us to look at that, and we did get approval for consideration of using betterment fees for infrastructure like.
We
Yeah,
have
I mean, that sort
a
of brings
tiger
us
by
into
the tail. We've got all the people that have signed up in the past that have paid the betterment fee, and now you're going to turn around and ask new people, not a betterment fee, a hookup fee, a outrageous hookup fee, and now you're going to say, well, the new people don't have to do that, and you're gonna have people calling us up day and night saying,
Well,
I got
that's
Well,
Well-
that may be true, but this wasn't set up properly when it was set up properly to begin with, and maybe it won't be fair, but it's got to be, I mean, betterment is the way that ordinary towns deal with this. And we chose not to do it that way. And we really, I think, need to be, in sync with the general way of dealing with local water systems.
right.
The other thing is the math, just two other observations, because I agree with what Tom said. I agree with what Catherine said. And it's a real conundrum, in terms of what's the right thing to do here from an equity standpoint. We're not that many customers away from having a system that is solvent. In other words, back to the earlier comment, I think I did some math a while ago, and I think if we add, it was something like 70 customers. I think we're at a break even. So it doesn't take a lot of customers to get this system solvent. The other thing is we have, Barry from HVCC did reach out to me again. We did have some conversations about them at our last meeting, and they sent us their costs of water right now, and they're in and around probably the 8,000 to 12,000 per year range. And I just did some back of the envelope numbers at our current water rates with our current customer charges. And they could potentially hook up to our system and either, at either what they're paying now or even for a little bit less. It would be substantially less if it was based on our current rates. So, just picking up a customer like that, you're bringing in potentially, $5,000 to $10,000. Then we've got, that other 70 or so pool that haven't connected yet. You know, in terms of the how to transition to, you know, people that aren't paying a customer or aren't paying a connection fee, you know, I would see that they would pay a slightly higher water fee and a higher customer charge than a customer who's already connected that already paid the connection fee. And, you know, that's a way of creating equity to, you know, in transition. So I think there's we have a lot of tools in the toolbox. I'm not sure which the right ones are quite yet, but that's just kind of, I think, a collection of them.
Well, I would say that that's why it's important that we get this financial consultant on board as quickly as possible, because that's where the credibility will be in, if we get somebody in who says, in order to make this system solvent, you need to do, here are your options. And it may be that it's going to be a multiple tiered rate structure for those folks who have already been part of the system and paid in connection fees up to this point. And those folks who haven't paid a standard connection fee yet, but would get assessed a larger base service fee, something like that. Anyway.
Well, that seems reasonable, something like that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to resolve this tonight, but if we do have to get help from, and that's what Karen and I are going to be meeting tomorrow with Charlie Sumner and with Becky Slick to talk about the process to find a consultant to assist us with this. And I'm hoping we'll get somebody on board fairly quickly to do this. So
If I were a praying person, I would pray.
Yeah. But it also raises, it's a good segue into the final item that we had here on the agenda, and that is proposed surveys. We have gotten a request from someone out on Chequasit Neck who is interested in town water and says that there are several properties out there that are interested as well. We don't know that for certain because we haven't surveyed out there, and I'm going to be suggesting that we do a survey of Chequasit Neck, the property owners out there, as preparation for the potential that there may be federal funds may come available for projects such as an expansion of the water system.
Now, where's that coming from, Jim?
What's that?
The money, that there might be some money available, because that's what stopped us a couple of years ago. We just looked at the budget and it was like it was just way out of bounds.
Well, I mean, I think that if you're thinking about Biden's infrastructure bill, his proposals.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. If you're talking about that level, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And there's also a big chunk of there's unspent COVID funds that have come into the state. There's actually a couple of different sources for shovel-ready type projects that, especially around water, wastewater, and other infrastructure.
Right.
Oh, that's a happy thought.
We like happy thoughts.
Yeah. Right. We can use a few.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, it's encouraging that some things are going forward, Jim. I'm really happy that you've got stuff in the pipeline already, and let's hope it works out.
Yeah. So
the other thing, just quickly with regard, going back to your comments about staff, we had a meeting with the board, the wastewater committee, the Clean Water Advisory Committee had a meeting with the Board of Selectmen the other week. And it wasn't a very good meeting, I'll be honest about it. But one of the things that I think came out of it was, I think even people like certain board members who shall remain nameless, I think are finally coming around to the idea that we probably need professional help. for both water and wastewater. And the complexity that's involved on the clean water side and the complexity that's involved on the water system side are getting out of control for the boards of volunteers. Jay Norton has been pretty upfront about being willing to take on some of this responsibility within DPW. And so I'm gonna push the Board of Selectmen to basically agree that we need to start to develop a position for water and wastewater, even if they won't approve a position, but get them on record supporting moving forward on this concept, so that we can start to get other people in town on board. I mean, ultimately, I think it has to go to the Board of Select, or it has to go to town meeting, but the idea would be that, you know, we'd have somebody housed either in DPW or the Conservation Department that would oversee these responsibilities. So it's the same concept that this board has in the past supported. It's the same concept that the Clean Water Advisory Board has supported in the past. But I think we're all kind of getting tired of saying that we need to get this done.
Yeah,
Right. So,
But I did want to let you know, there's something else, there is something going on in that regard. So it's good, you know, the fact that we're all voicing the same thing in a Board of Water Commissioner meeting as well is just helpful.
yeah. Well, Kurt, it's nice that you wear two hats and we get this additional information.
So that's all I had. The only other item that we had on the agenda was the minutes, and I can't access them now, given my situation with my internet access here. So I was going to ask if we could postpone approval of the minutes of the 7th of September until our next meeting.
That's fine.
Sure.
So is there
Neil?
anything?
You need a motion?
No, we don't need a motion. We need a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, we do.
Well, no, we do. Well, that's one. What about the next meeting? So today's the 4th. The 2 weeks from now would be the 18th. By that time, we will have the RFP, the responses in for both RFPs. So I'm thinking we could
Okay.
schedule a meeting for that day if that works.
Yes, the 19th.
Jim,
Okay,
it would be the
shoot for that.
19th.
19th, yeah,
Tuesday the
That work?
19th. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
great.
Yep.
All right. The next meeting will
Okay.
be on for 19th. So. Unless there's anything else, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So move.
Second.
Okay. We'll take a roll call vote. Tom,
That was a thumbs up.
thumbs up. Okay. Is Neil still with us?
He is.
I'm hoping you're reading this.
We actually got your voice as well as your audio, Neil. You finally got it. You finally got it. He's a thumbs up, Tim.
So we're asking you, so is that a yay for adjourning the meeting?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Kateri,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
and I agree. Yes. So we stand adjourned. We will meet again on October 19th. I really appreciate your patience tonight with all of the technical issues that we face.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.